Well, welcome. We're so glad you guys could come today and be part of this program that we have. It's our first person stories of hope. And what it is to give you a little sense of how this whole incident impacted people's lives on the day of the bombing and since. We are so fortunate to have with us today Tony Lippe, and he's a native Oklahoman, has worked as a licensed practical nurse for 25 years, and on April 19th, 1995, he worked for the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office and responded to the bombing. He's married and the father of a son, Tyler, and he loves spending his time at the memorial and talking with people he meets here. He's a quality assurance coordinator and instructor for the Certified Nurse Aide Training Program at Oklahoma State University in Oklahoma City. So he'll share his story with you. And at the end, if you have any questions, he'd be happy to answer. And if you'd be so kind to fill out the card before you leave, and you can just leave it on your chair, that would be great. So at this time, please welcome Tony Lippe.
Thanks, guys. Take this lanyard off. I always bring this with me. This was a name tag that I was given by the FBI about April 20th, I guess. So it's just something that I've always brought with me when I come and speak, or even on April 19th, I still wear it to this day, and then it goes back in the drawer. But give you a little history here. I did become an LPN in 1987, right out of high school. I went to a VOTEC that still allowed seniors in high school to start the nursing program, so I was very fortunate to do that at a young age. Before that, I was a nurse's aide, even in high school. At age 16, thought I could work in a nursing home, and that lasted one day. As a matter of fact, I tell people I never even went back and got the paycheck for that 1 8-hour shift. I was scared to death, and that'll come back in full circle here later in my story. That morning of April of 1995, after being a nurse basically since the early 80s, April 1st, I went to day shift for the very first time in my career. Because in March, I went to the sheriff and said, Sheriff, I got a son at home. He's 9 months old, and I'm not seeing him working this evening shift. I get home at midnight, and I stay up all night and watch TV, catch up on the repeat of the news. And time I go to bed and sleep in, and they're getting up, and it's time for me to go to work. So I finally went to day shift for the first time in my nursing career on April 1. So I was at the Oklahoma County Jail that morning. And it was a very unusual morning because I always say the only time I ever cook breakfast is on the weekends. Weekdays I don't. I get up, go to work, and then it's lunchtime, and I make it till the end somehow. I don't know, but I do. Weekends I get up and fix a big lunch. That Wednesday morning of April 19th, 1995, I woke up wide awake like at 5 o'clock in the morning. So maybe I was finally getting adjusted to those daytime hours, but I was just wide awake, and I got up and fixed a huge breakfast. So somebody, I say, the good man upstairs was looking after me and gave me some extra fuel that morning, because that's just, I've never done it probably even since then. But I got up and fixed a big breakfast, and I remember kissing my wife and son goodbye, headed off to work. It was a normal morning. The guards were bringing up some of the inmates for us to see in the clinic. The doctor was about to arrive. Just as I reached for the telephone on the wall, when everything changed. It was a major sound, major rumble. I live by Tinker Air Force Base and have my whole life. It wasn't even a sonic boom. I mean, I hear some of those big B-1s out there and it rattles the house. It was much different than that. Some of the people actually in the jail fell, and we saw a major crack right there on the 13th floor of the infirmary. Within minutes, my police radio went off. The bricks we used to have to carry on these scrubs, and somebody came across, said there'd been a gas line explosion downtown Oklahoma City. Wow, it was an awful big gas line explosion. It filled up on 4 blocks away on the 13th floor of the jail. But anyway, within minutes, we were told to send me and another male nurse and our director of nursing over, take whatever supplies we could. So back then, I was much skinnier, and these scrubs would have been tucked in, and we filled our tops full of IV bags and Band-Aids and gauze and gloves. Rushed down 5th Street as we came over. And the first thing I encountered that morning was out here in front of the Regency Towers, where later we know the axle was found and was a big part of that day. But we walked by the Regency Towers, and there was a female postal worker coming at us in her uniform with just this blank stare on her face. And me and the other 2 nurses came upon her, and we started talking to her, and she said, "No, I'm fine, I'm just going to my doctor." And she just, didn't even look at us, just was in shock. And as I went on, and Lynn, the guy that was with me, stayed with her. As I got past her, she had a piece of glass about this big just stuck in her back like a samurai sword. And I was like, oh my gosh, set her down. And I, to this day, don't know the outcome with this lady. I'm sure she made it, but don't know a name. Always wonder who she was and how she's doing. But They stayed behind and we entered. And we came over to the front of the building where the largest part of the impact was that you see in the pictures. Tried to enter there. And I remember one of the paramedics that I've known for a long time was standing there. She said, "Tony, let's take these supplies and go start a triage up on the plaza." So we went around to the back side of the plaza and dropped all our supplies there except some gloves that we kept on us and entered the building. Went into the building, it's probably 9:30, 9:40 by this time, I guess. Had no track of time that day, those days actually. But we entered the building, was immediately inside what appeared to be the basement, and we were standing in a large amount of water. It was higher than my waist. I just remember going into that water, and the scary thing was you could hear the fire alarms in the building going off, so I didn't know that there wasn't even electricity still in that part of the building as we went into the water. But the first thing I really remember that morning in that water was toys floating and seeing some crumpled up coloring books and such. And I didn't know there was a daycare in this building. The only thing I knew at the time, there was federal inmate cells for the federal court that they would house them downstairs before taking him over at 9 o'clock for court. So obviously that had happened, and I remember seeing the cell doors. They were completely off, the jail cells at this time. They had been blown off. But we carried on and went into the darkest part of that building that morning, and I could hear a child crying. That's what drew me to that part of the building. And I took out a pen light and started carrying it, pinched it down to my mouth, and we dug on in to the major part of the daycare, which was located on the second floor, and now it's pretty well in the basement. And the first child I got to was laying there, and really face-wise and stuff, he looked very peaceful. I just can't ever get that face out of my mind. And got to him, and he perished, but a lot of shrapnel had taken out his abdomen and stuff. So within that time, they had already started doing what I think of as a bucket brigade, but it was blankets. They were passing blankets in and bringing them in from the local hospital up the street here at St. Anthony's. And all I remember is taking that child and wrapping him up in a blanket and just kind of holding on to him. A little blonde-headed kid, child, somebody's child. But like I said, I had a 9-month-old at the time, so I immediately just had this, what if thinking in my head. But I held this young child for a while. And sometime after 10:15, 10:30, we know now that they thought they found some more bomb material and evacuated the Murrah building. Made us all exit the building. And a large highway patrolman came by and made me leave. And we got me up, and I carried Colton out of the building with me, and I set him down on a park bench just outside the back side of the Murrah building, which later I found out was the playground where these children went to at break and such. But I laid Colton down, wrapped up in that blanket, and we exited the back of the building. Unfortunately, I didn't but just outside the building as I ran down, we were headed toward Broadway. I remember they just kept saying, make everybody go past the bridge, make sure everybody goes past the bridge. But my lieutenant was standing there, and he said, "Lippe, I need you to do traffic. We're going to evacuate all downtown Oklahoma City, make sure they go." And that was chaos because those people wanted to come get their cars out from underneath the parking garage. It just blows my mind. They're like, "No, I need to get my car out." You can't get your car go. So I remember that. So I stood there and we did traffic for a little while. And then things got a little more organized at that point because then we went back in as groups where it was a nurse, a doctor, a paramedic, a firefighter, and I just remember being a little more organized. But that was that whole day. I mean, it started raining at night. It turned from a beautiful sunny April day to cold and rainy by the evening. And you just lost all track of time. I mean, I remember doing one traffic detail later that evening where the national media started coming in. And before I know it, beside me is just piles and piles of flashlights and batteries. And, they say the local news had started saying what was going to be needed. And I mean, people were just driving by that checkpoint, just dropping them off. And before I knew it, I had so many batteries and flashlights. It's just unbelievable. I wish I'd had cell phones back then for just a picture of that. It was just the amazing, immediate response by the city. Later that night, by then my scrubs, I had this exact color scrubs on that day, and from my knee, just above my knee down was gone. My pants were gone from all the glass, and I was soaked in all kind of fluids besides just the rain. And my wife at the time brought me a change of clothes. We ran over to Burger King off Western and ate and came right back, and after that, it was probably 10 o'clock at night, and we went home. I remember going home and changing. I didn't like the shoes I had on and put on my black high-top boots, more of my paramedic-type clothing and a tougher material than the scrubs she brought me. But I tried to lay down in my own bed that night, and I remember within an hour or two, I could not, and I came back. That was my only time to come home. And the next time I went home, it was Sunday night. That's where the time, from Wednesday to Sunday, and now it's Sunday. And it was kind of interesting this week. I spoke to a conference of CNAs. The national conference was here yesterday and Wednesday. And I spoke to them in a room at the Cox Convention Center, which back then was the Myriad. And the room we were in, held in this big conference of 400 CNAs plus, was the same room that I laid down on a cot each evening throughout the night of back in April 19th, where we had brownies and things that the children around town and were leaving on our cots, the letters and stuff. And as my wife knows, I still have that large tub of all of those materials, all those notes and coloring pages that kids were bringing in and sending to us that were on our cot each night when we laid down. So it was just really ironic to be telling my story to the national CNAs the other night and being back in that room, and I had to explain to them this is the room where we came each evening and tried to recover and heal and work on our blisters on our feet. I mean, it was bad. I remember getting injections of lidocaine in the bottom of our feet into the blisters of our feet about the second or third night. Those days went on, and Sunday I finally said, I'm going home. I was just physically and mentally wore out. I went home Sunday night. Sometime Monday, gotten up, was talking to the wife, and somewhere on there the local NBC station was showing still home videos of people that were missing and people that had perished in April 19th, and all of a sudden here came a home video of two little blonde boys. And I just never forget. I mean, I immediately knew now who this child was, and his name was Colton Smith. Well, they were talking about Colton and his brother Chase, and the funeral was the next day on Tuesday. So sometime in those days, CNN had interviewed me, or an Associated Press lady that was shown on CNN had interviewed me, and heard me talk about laying this young boy down in a blanket on the park bench. Well, Edie Smith, come to find out his mom was on the news that night talking about her son. She and I got there, her son was found on the park bench wrapped in a blanket. So finally these two stories overlapped and connected, and we met at the graveside of Colton Chase's funeral on Tuesday morning. And have become very close since then. I mean, we've stayed in contact, especially every April 19th when we get together. But I had a lot of anger. Within a year, I became divorced. I mean, I just didn't want to talk. I do not remember Time Life or Time Magazine came out and interviewed me at my house. I see the article. We have a copy of it or two in the tub. I do not remember them, and my ex-wife will still tell me, yeah, they came out one of the evenings that week after the funeral and interviewed us right here in our house. You came home from work, and they were here. I don't remember any of that. I don't even remember going back to work. I ended up not working at the county jail. Got divorced, the typical statistics back then, and got out of nursing totally. I said, I don't want to be a nurse anymore. I was ICU nurse. I was orthopedics for a long time at Baptist Hospital here in Oklahoma City, the burn center, orthopedic surgery. I loved the adrenaline back then and the blood and guts and all that, and I didn't want anything to do with that anymore. And actually, within a couple of years, I took a job at DirecTV and became an instructor at DirecTV how to be an operator for the call center. And it was a 2-week course, you know, it was kind of fun. I was one of the older guys, so I made it up the ladder pretty quick. But finally, 97, maybe 98, I went to a critical incident workshop that I was kept being told about by one of the police chaplains that I knew. My father's an Oklahoma City police officer, so some of his friends were saying, hey, Tony really needs to go to this critical incident workshop. Some of the survivors, some of the victims' family members, Diane Leonard, that I'd met several times, kept saying, Tony, you really ought to go to this. It'll really do you some good. So I went and spent a week up in Stillwater, Oklahoma, at a critical incident workshop several years after the bombing. And this is my first light of life where I finally could see the light and things are starting to change. And I'm sitting in a room of 20, 25 people in a circle, and it's made up of a couple of the rescue workers, first responders, lots of family who had lost people in the bombing, and even some people that were in the building themselves, some of the victims that had been in the building. So it was a full circle of all of us, because my biggest issue back then was I didn't understand why I was so upset, because I didn't lose somebody. I kept thinking about Colton Chase, how bad is it? These parents lost 2 children, and people lost their sisters and their brothers, and I was just having such a struggle with that because I didn't lose anybody. As a nurse, I was able to usually separate that, but I couldn't any longer. I just was having, that was my whole problem. I became so much more emotional with things when it came to life and death. But sitting in this workshop, I heard this family start talking and telling a story of their daughter who perished because of April 19th. She was the young nurse, came as a volunteer that morning entered the building, was helping out when a cinder block hit her in the head, and she had a major seizure here on site. There's even a picture right after the seizure. She was taken to the local hospital and perished a few days later. They're telling this story about this awesome woman who I come to find out graduated from the nursing school I attended a couple of years after me. So there was this connection. She was an LPN. There was this other connection. But the biggest connection is she was a nursing home nurse and loved taking care of the elderly. And the more I heard these stories from Mom and Dad and the brothers, her brother, and just this connection, this bond was immediately developed like my own family, sometimes maybe closer than some of my own family. But that was meant to be, because I met the family of Rebecca and Needham Anderson that night, and for days after, and 17 years later, I still have a great connection with the Needham family. Within a few years, one of the anniversaries, it could have been the 4th or 5th anniversary, we got together. They stayed here locally in a hotel. We got together and had dinner. They came out to our house when I lived in Yukon. And I remember sitting in my living room and said, I need to tell y'all something. I'm going to work at the local nursing home right here in Yukon, Oklahoma for the first time, because my only thoughts of the nursing home is what I saw in '83. And because of some great laws that changed nationally, everything had changed in nursing home, and it wasn't such a scary place. It was a great job. Within a year going back to that nursing home, because of my teaching experience at DirecTV, teaching adults, they said, why don't you teach our CNA program? I'm like, really? You have your own CNA program here in this nursing home? Well, I said, yeah, our corporate office. We own 5 or 6 nursing homes. And I did that for 5 years, and now I've been at Oklahoma State University for 6 years, and I'm very honored as an LPN to work for a major university with no college degree. I just have the licensed practical nurse vocational school degree, and I'm working for a major university as a director of this training program, associate director. There's an RN above me. I don't even have to do the teaching, but I go into every class. These classes are 12 days long, and I go into every class and explain to them, this 12-day class is only going to teach you enough to go out there and start safely learning. There's no way we're going to teach you everything we need to know in 12 days. And I tell them about Rebecca Needham Anderson being this great geriatric nurse, one of the heroes of April 19th, who came in and gave her life, because it's unheard of to hear a nurse killed in the line of duty unless you're in the military. And that's why I think of it. So the other night we brought about 250 of the 400 attendees through the Memorial Wednesday night. It was closed just for our group, and I was honored. That's the second time we've done that at their national conference in Oklahoma City over the years. My biggest thing that I learned from that critical incident workshop, one, they talked about a video, and there was a clip that we heard of General Schwarzkopf from the first Desert Storm. And he's talking to a group of soldiers from Desert Storm, and this had the biggest impact on me, because I couldn't figure out, I didn't want to cry. I was an old bull rider. I rode bulls for about 6 or 7 years through high school, and a couple years afterwards. Tried to be the tough guy. So I was having this whole, this macho problem with being teared up and couldn't talk about this stuff and having such an emotional thing. But Schwarzkopf's in this video, and I wish I could say it verbatim, but I can't. But he was telling his soldiers, I'd have more of an issue with you guys that aren't upset about what you saw in this war than the issue I have with you that are having the issues and having the emotional problems. And that just hit me. It hit close to home, because all we kept hearing is how much the Murrah building was like a war zone that day of all the things we saw. And I don't ever go into the details. I talk to somebody. If you have questions, I will one-on-one, but I don't want to go into all the gory details of stuff we saw those first 4 and 5 days of April 19th. But I took out of there after getting divorced and going through these critical workshops and having friends like the Guzman family and all the other people that we met April 19th. Our April 19th now is a celebration and an anniversary of these 168 plus victims' life. We don't come here and have sorrow. We come here and celebrate and remember those 168 people, because we have to be their voice. We cannot let them, anybody ever forget this story. It was a major part of history, especially here in Oklahoma. But I learned that day because I had Timothy McVeigh in the same jail where I worked at, where I stayed there for a few months, and I had so much anger in life, and got, like I said, divorced, so that made me mad at the ex-wife. And I realized that through this critical incident workshop, by me being mad at Timothy McVeigh or Terry Nichols or anybody else in life, they were controlling me. He was smiling every day waking up in that jail cell. He accomplished what he wanted, and all of us people upset. He was kind of the winner, and I said, no more. I said, he's not going to win this battle. So I finally was able to give that up and not, and now that's the way my life is. the compassion and stuff that came out of me and I learned back then made me a better nurse, because I tell my students every day, one thing I can't teach you in here is common sense and compassion, but you have to have it to be a nurse. I have more compassion now as a nurse, especially for the elderly, when you're holding the hand of a resident who's passing on, to be able to do that job because of what I went through on April 19th and because of that critical workshop. So my two biggest things that I try to tell people is don't hold grudges. You're going to be mad for a while, but the longer you're mad at that ex or that boyfriend or girlfriend, the more they're in control. They're out partying and you're just over here all angry. They won. They're always in control. And the other thing, life's too short. You know, I let everything roll off my back now. My wife's going to be having a terrible day, and she knows she can call me and say, God, I wish I could let things roll off my back like he does, because after April 19th and I figured out how short life is, I think of Colton Smith, 2 years old. Ask him how short life was. My son was, however old my son is, every April 19th is the anniversary date. He's 17 years old for a few more days, and April 19th this year was the 17th anniversary. So Tyler's about to turn 18 and go off. He's leaving the day after his 18th birthday for George Washington University. So it's a whole new deal in my life. But I think that was my hardest part, was the nightmares I was having. I was seeing my own son. And people always say, does it still impact us today? I guarantee it does. And you can ask my wife this. When I have the nightmares now, and for a long time I didn't know why this was happening, and I swear I'm the only one that does this. I haven't heard of anybody else doing this, but when I have a nightmare and I'm going through the bad nightmare, I chew the hair off my arms. And you can see the pattern on my arms where I have no hair, and then I have hair. And sometimes this will be as thick here as it is on the side of my arms. Well, finally, I was put under hypnosis and hypnotized and was reliving some of that and going back through the thoughts. And when I came out and we got to talking, and what he figured out was I had so much glass in my arm, and I still have the scars from that glass. We'd be sitting there at night on those cots trying to pick the glass out with my teeth. And so now when I have the nightmares, it's not the glass, it's the hair on my arms that I'm pulling out. Drives me insane. My wife will wake up. Wake up, Tony, you're chewing. I don't think the nightmare wakes her up as much as me probably chewing on my arms. And I'll even be dozed off or having a daydream and be there. She will have to reach over and say, Tony, and, bring me back, because it drives me insane. Especially one time I went about 7 months without doing it at all. And then for no apparent reason, it happened again. This place is one of the most important places to me now in life, because it did change my life, and now it changed me for the better. There's several people in this audience that are the most important people in my life too. My wife, some of the Needham families here, and one of the victims of April 19th, one of our Marines, his brother's here from California today. Very important people to me in my life because of April 19th, and I appreciate so much of all of you being here. All of you in this room are therapists to me. I wish I could pay each one of you, because every time we tell this story, it helps us with what's going on in life. April 19th did change our lives, but we learned how to live with it and get past that and still live a full life today and teach people about what we learned on April 19th. Again, I thank y'all for being here. And like she said, if there's any questions, if you don't want to ask them in front of people, please talk to me outside or one-on-one. I don't mind at all. I don't have any place to go because we're in the process of moving homes, and until it's dark, I'm not moving anything else again today. We work after dark now in this 118-degree weather. So again, thank you guys for being here. The Needham family, thank you very much. Rudy Guzman, thank you so much for coming today. You know how much that means to me. So.